Hey everybody, Super Vader 400 here, back for another retro review. This is my narration portion of my re-reviews of the Eternal Champions comics issues 19 through 24 and issues 37 through 40, Larson's Revenge. I enjoyed my last review, my last webcam review of the Eternal Champions, but I while I understood the plot of the comics, I couldn't tell in depth what was happening in the comics because I was blown away by such excitement and there was so much going on in the comics that I couldn't really explain what was happening in the comics. So this is my re-review of both of the Eternal Champion comics. This is the narration portion. In the webcam portion of this review, I'm going to talk more about the story, and the characters, the artwork, and everything else. But right here, I'm just going to briefly just talk about the comics as like I said in my previous video on the Eternal Champions. I've been looking for this comic for a long time now, and thanks to a guy named Mortal Kombat Comics, I finally got to read both of these comics. There appears to be three comics because I was on Wikipedia and they said there was another one that served as an adaptation of the game that introduced the main characters. This comic, both of these comics right here, appear to be set after the video games, and it's just awesome stuff. The comic book is very similar to the early 90s Jim Barnes. I think that's his name, the legendary comic book writer of the early 90s X-Men series. That's what this comic book is vastly similar to, and this comic was a great adaptation of the game. All the characters come to life in this comic book, and they reference the game. The characters in this comic reference the game numerous times, and every character in this game is pretty much true to who they are in the game, and is who I would expect them to be if you ever made a different adaptation of them. Every character pretty much acts like him or her stereotypical self. You got well, like I said, I'll talk more about the characters in the next video. But the first comic, which is the Eternal Champions issues 19 through 24, is my favorite. I like both, but this is my favorite because, as you can see by the cover, it involves all of the Eternal Champions. It involves all the Eternal Champions, whereas the second comic mostly involves it just involves Larson and Tyler. It just involves Larson, Tyler, and Shadow Yamato. Well, like I said, this this was my narration portion of the Eternal Champions comic. Here comes the webcam portion next. All right, dugout. Hey everybody, the Super Vader 400 here, back for another video, and this is the webcam portion of my re-reviews of both of the Eternal Champions comics. I'm gonna start off with Eternal Champions comic issues 19 through 24 because this is my favorite comic of the two comics, and the reason I like this comic book the best is because it involves all of the Eternal Champions comics. The plot of the comic is in 1994, Shadow Yamato returns to her time and is leading the Eternal Champions on a mission to stop Bo Nakano of Nakano Industries from unlocking the BioKey technology. The plot begins with with Bo Nakano scheming about unlocking the BioKey technology. Then suddenly he is ambushed. He is ambushed by Shadow Yamato, and Bo Nakano is shocked to see her because he was pretty sure he had her killed. Shadow tells him that he is mistaken, and that this time she's back for revenge, and this time she is not fighting alone, that she is back to stop him, and at this time she is not fighting alone. And here enter the other Eternal Champions: Jonathan Blade, the bounty hunter; R.A.X Carswell, the cybernetic kickboxer; Jetta Max, the circus acrobat who practices savate; Slash, the caveman; Trident, the mutant gladiator; um, Larson Tyler, the 1920s gangster; um, Mitchell Midnight, the vampire; and Xavier, the alchemist and wizard. The Eternal Champions successfully fight their way through most of Bull Nakano's guards, but um, but Jonathan Blade deviates from the plan, and he Shadow Yamoto and Slash end up getting captured by being zapped by a machine by being zapped and sent to a machine that pulls knowledge from their brains. So now it's up to R.A.X Carswell, Larson Tyler, Jetta Max, Trident, Xavier, and Midnight to continue the mission and also their comrades. Free their comrades. In the next issue, the Eternal Champions go to the future and go to R.A.X Carswell's stage, the Cyberdome where they participate in a mock um in a mock tournament and pretend to fight each other for the spectators. They take the place of the original cyber fighters, and the original cyber fighters show up planning to kill them for taking their place. They first go to a weapons room and retrieve some guns so they be a match for the cyber warriors. They fight the cyber warriors. Um and while they're fighting the cyber warriors, Bo Nakano is scanning the brainwaves of Blade, Slash, and Shadow, and is trying to pull knowledge from their brains. Slash's brain is too primitive, and he breaks out of control and breaks free and smashes Bo Nakano's machine and frees himself, Blade, and Shadow. Meanwhile, back in the future, the remaining Eternal Champions are still fighting the Cyber Warriors, while Rax, um, Rax fixes the coordinates to send them back to 1994 Shadow Yamoto's time, and they successfully leave with the remaining cyber warrior promising to kill Rax for his treachery. And Rax says he'll be waiting, and him and the other champions return to 1994, where Blade and where they greet Blade and Slash and Shadow, who are now free, but it's all too late as Bull Nakano has successfully unlocked the bio key, which is some kind of helicopter with tentacles and guns. The Eternal Champions fight Bull Nakano's new machine, and are just barely able to defeat him when not Slash, but Trident smashes and destroys Bull Nakano's machine and severely injures Bull Nakano, and the Eternal Champions are then transported back. The issue ends there for the champions. They're transported back to the future, but the issue actually ends with Bull Nakano surprisingly alive, but now confined to a motor wheelchair, wanting to continue his research, and plotting for his next move. And this particular comic ends there. Like I said, this was my favorite comic. This was my favorite comic of the two. The artwork was great. The artwork reminds me of Jim Barnes' early 1990s X-Men comic. Hell, the Eternal Champions franchise in general reminds me of it reminds me of the X-Men in the video game, and this is referenced in the comic. This is referenced in the comic. In the video game, there's a mode called Battle Room, where you get to choose, where you get to adjust the difficulty settings and choose your character and your opponent and fight it out as some kind of weird control room. That reminds me of the Danger Room from X-Men. X-Men, and the action sequences remind me of the X-Men, only Eternal Champion style action. All the characters pull off signature maneuvers and combos from the video game video game. And speaking of the video game, this comic book, not only is it set, not only is it's actually set after the video game. It's a awesome adaptation of the video game. All the characters look like their character, and each character comes to life in this new. Each character comes to life in this new form of media. Each character, as I predicted, are portrayed as how I predicted them to be portrayed. You got Jonathan Blade, who is similar to Jax from Mortal Kombat, and TJ Combo from Killer Instinct. He is pretty much the he is pretty much the he is pretty much the wisecracking tough bad guy. Wisecracking tough bad guy. You got Rats Carswell, the futuristic action hero type character. Action type character. You got Larson Tyler, the modern action hero, even though he's from the 20s, the modern action hero type character, and the gangster and the level-headed member of the team. Then you got Shadow Yamoto, the serious, tough, disciplined female member, and the most level-headed member of the team, Shadow Yamoto. Then you got Slash, the caveman, who's similar to the Hulk. He's Neanderthal. He's the Neanderthal. All he knows is smash. He's the primate, the primitive character of the group. Next is Trident, who is the dramatic, stereotypical gladiator personality. Even speaking in even talking like a gladiator, talking like an ancient Greek, saying words like treachery. Um, you have Xavier, Xavier, the eccentric alchemist, and and wizard. Then you have who's obsessed with magic and thinks magic solves everything. Then you have Mitchell Midnight, the stereotypical warlock vampire character trying to control his lust for blood, trying to control in order for him to be able to complete his mission. So like I said, each character comes to life in this in this and then you got Jetta Max, tough strong female feminist of the group. So like I said, each character comes to life, and each character is portrayed how I predict they would be portrayed if you ever adapted them for a new form of media. So like I said, great great comic, and like I said, this comic references is the games. This comic references the games a lot. Like I said, each character hits their signature maneuvers and fighting style from the games. You see Mitchell Midnight hitting one of his kick combos. Then you see Xavier using his bow staff and his spells. Then you see Blade using his fists and his power bands. You see um Larson using his sharp brass knuckles and his praying mantis kung fu maneuvers. Shadow Emoto using ninjutsu and taijutsu, and Jetta Max using her acrobatic savate moves. So like I said, each character, and Trident using his using his sharp hand object maneuver, his hook for a hand to fight his Slash, using his club like a caveman using his club. So like I said, character each each character comes to life in this issue. Well, that's it for the first issue. Now it's time for the second issue. That's Eternal Champions Larson's Revenge, which features Larson teaming up with Shadow Yamato to take down the crime boss who set him up and had him killed. The prologue starts off with Larson talking about the game, talking about how he's competing, how he's one of the Eternal Champions, competing for a second chance at life, and the comic starts with him back in 1920 Chicago in a in an apartment where he's about to receive the call for his next job. He reports to the place of his next job. The Eternal Champion sends Shadow Yamato on a mission to accompany him. Shadow Yamato gets herself captured, and it's up to Larson to rescue her. It is later revealed by Larson that Shadow Yamato probably planned to have herself captured, or I think retrieve some specific documents that will put all the Chicago gangs behind bars. Larson does this. Um, Larson does this, and him and Shadow Yamato team up and take out Talagani. I think that's his name. That's the crime boss who had Larson killed. Take out him and his men, and escape a fiery explosion where Shadow believes the evidence has been destroyed, but Larson reveals that he held on to the evidence. And Shadow Yamato tells him tells him tells him that both of them are needed in the future, and the comic ends there. My only disappointment with this comic is that there isn't even more, and they didn't go to other times in correcting and fixing and stopping the bad guys from all the other characters' timeline. That's my only disappointment. There isn't more Eternal Champions. I said it once, I'll say it again. When I'm done with all of my stuff, I hope to one day return to the Eternal Champions franchise and make a new comic, a television series, and a live action film, and hopefully seeing all that will make Sega get together with another video game studio and make a brand new modern 8th generation Eternal Champions video games. Eternal Champions video games is one of those long list of video games that I want and many other people want to see come back. But continuing with this comic, let's get to the positives. The positives of this comic, but like I said, the artwork and action are good. Only other problem I have is that it doesn't involve the other Eternal Champions. But then again, it's a comic about Larson taking down some gangsters. You probably didn't need the Eternal Champions for this. In the last comic, they were fighting cyber warriors and Bo Nakano's men who were gifted with technology and guys with guns. So you had to have the Eternal Champions in that issue, but you probably need them in this. You probably didn't need them in this comic. So that's the only problem I had with it. But prior to reading this comic, I never cared. Prior to reading both of these comics, I never cared for Larson. I never cared much for Larson's character. He was always generic in comparison to the other Eternal Champions. Yeah, I know Eternal Champions has a colorful cast of characters, but I thought a 1920s gangster was kind of generic. Was kind of generic in comparison to the other characters in the game. In comparison to the other characters in the game, I always thought he was kind of lame and generic. That was until I read. That was until I read. That was until I read both of these stories, especially his story, which story-wise, gameplay-wise, I still don't care much for Larson, but story-wise, made me like Larson a whole lot more. Makes me want to see more of this this character. This comic actually made me care about Larson Tyler. Like I said, this was my review of both of the Eternal Champions comics. Killer Instinct is next.